Hello, wonderful people. Ready to tackle chapter 3? Oh, yes, we're in week 2 out of 12 and we got 2 chapters to go. So jump to it. I hope you have your textbook right there and, of course, something to write on and something to write with. And I again added the page numbers to the slide so you can flip and follow along. All right, what are we focusing on for chapter 3? The environmental forces that we need to focus on as marketers. And this is really one of my favorite chapters. So let's see how it goes. We are going to first meet the micro and macro parts of the environment. So the micro environment means that we're focusing on the company itself and the what's called the stakeholders. So with here we have the employee, we have the suppliers, we have the competitors, we have the public and the customers. Now heads up, there is a macro view also coming up, but we're focusing on the micro environment first. And our book walks us through all those parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts, right? So be sure to read up on those. We've looked at the micro environment. Let's look at the macro environment for an organization. Why would we do that, right? Because that's a handful. Well, turns out that things are constantly changing, and we as marketers have to be able to identify the changes or react to them or proactively do something in order to anticipate those or initiate those. Okay, so it's very important that we stay on top of that. When it comes to the human population, isn't that so amazing? So many things have changed about how we live together, where we live together, who it is who lives together. And here you see the 4 generational groups that we'll be focusing on: the baby boomers, the Generation X, millennials, and Generation Z. Which one do you belong to? Well, tell you, I am a baby boomer. Woohoo! So let's check how the economic environment is. Well, one of the most discussed parts is, of course, the income distribution. In the US, as you can see from this graph that I found online, the income inequality is very high in the US compared to others. If you look on the left-hand side here, the Northern European countries are the most equal as far as income is concerned, and then we are getting more and more. Germany is kind of in the middle. And can you find the country you're interested in or your family is from? And here is the US. Now, they might have stopped there, but I don't know how many other countries there actually are. Let's look at nature around us. Well, of course, raw materials, especially when it comes to the computers that we're so dependent on now, or the computers called cell phones, smartphones. They're those rare earths that are necessary in order to build them, and it's really getting harder to find them. They're mostly focused in 1 or 2 countries in the world, and yeah, so that has a big impact on it. The other thing is that there is more pressure to create a sustainable economy. Okay. I hope you're with that too. What about technologies? I found this graph, which I like very much because it showcases how things have changed over time. Isn't it just absolutely amazing how in the early 80s, the computers, and usually, here's the DOS interface and mainframe started, and then we are getting into the personal computer, cell phone use. Yeah, I remember those. And the first car phones were about this big too. So all of these inventions have really impacted how we do business and how we can market and to whom we market and what we market. Makes sense, right? So we need to keep track of that. Political environment, oh my God. We have, of course, new laws. We have changes in governments in the US and around the world. And there's a big table on page 86. Here are four that I like to focus on. The Trademark Act, which actually helped make it possible to protect images. Then Child Protection Act, which helped protect children by restricting the advertising and children's programs on TV and radios. Then remember when I told you about the caveat emptor, buyer beware? Well, 1972 was really when it started to, this was under Kennedy, I believe, where we could start to assume that what we're buying is okay for us, is safe enough for us. And of course, the Americans with Disability Act, 1991. All of these are very, very important. Last but not least, the cultural environment here, when we're going to focus for a moment on the US, where we have certain core beliefs that are really hard to change, or rather they change slowly. So one of them in the US is definitely, the Lone Ranger, the John Wayne riding alone into the sunset, you know, taking care of your own destiny, being your own boss kind of thing. Whereas in other cultures, that is not the case. Secondary beliefs are more open to change. So for example, when it comes to some of the expected behaviors, I'm looking at this one here. Those are right. It seems to be okay these days to, for example, yawn without covering your mouth, or to have your cell phone out in a restaurant. It's really interesting how that is slowly changing. Now, again, in other countries, that might not be the case. So we need to understand what the core and secondary beliefs are. So what? Well, it means that as marketers for an organization, we can then either react to what we see happening, or we can anticipate or try to initiate changes in the environment. Make sense? I hope so. So this was what we focused on in chapter 3, the environmental forces. Also heads up, please. Yes, you will research those for the marketing plan that you will be working on later. So have a great time reading the chapter 3 in our textbook, and talk to you soon.